This is WMNF Tampa.
Giving voice to a more just and sustainable world since 1979. WMNF Tampa, where music, news, and culture collide.
A revolution in Syria. Political prisoners freed. What next? I beg your pardon. President Joe Biden is considering preemptive pardons before 45 retakes the Oval Office. And drug-dealing police in the 1980s, overturning drug convictions in Florida. And a happy belated birthday to a beloved political thinker, Professor Noam Chomsky. He turned 96 years old on December the 7th, but sadly has lost his ability to speak or write as a result of a massive stroke. We will listen back to his talk from 2 years ago as he speaks about 45 and the crisis of U.S. democracy. This is Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patro Mabili, here on your community radio station, WMNF 88.5 FM. Of course, this is my opportunity to speak with you about the world and what's going on in your name. And of course, you can call 813-239-9663. You could also write DJ at WMNF.org. A lot to talk about today, including what is happening on the globe and what it all means in terms of the power of especially Russia and many of the bad actors on the globe right now, and that is coming up. But we'll also talk about prisons and prisoners. These mentioned it that the U.S. government is closing women's prisons and other facilities in at least 7 states, and one including right here in Florida, and I'll tell you which one. So give us a call, 813-239-9663. But I do want to start by talking about the birthday of, or listening to, Noam Chomsky, who we don't have the pleasure of hearing from anymore. So we got to start there because he was talking about a couple of years ago about the crisis of U.S. democracy, and given what is happening in the world today, that is going to be a great place to start as you go to the telephone lines and start the conversation right here on Community Speaks. So keep it tuned as we start out today's program talking or listening to Noam Chomsky talk about the crisis of U.S. democracy a couple of years ago, but it's still relevant. And Noam Chomsky is, again, one of the most beloved thinkers, voices in this country. And, of course, he has not been completely mainstream. He considers himself anarchist or anarcho-syndicalist, anti-Vietnam War movement was one of the main focuses a few decades ago. But he's an incisive critic of the ideological role of the mainstream corporate mass media, which he maintains manufactures consent towards the desirability of capitalism and the political powers supportive of it. So keep it tuned as we start the conversation out right here on Community Speaks.
The crisis goes back a long way. It goes back really to the 1970s. By the 1970s, the two political parties, which are not really that different, they're both business parties with somewhat different emphasis. So back in the 1960s, you couldn't tell a moderate Republican from a moderate Democrat. They're almost interchangeable. I voted for Republicans back in the 60s. It's inconceivable now. Starting in the 1960s, both parties underwent a change. This was part of larger factors taking place in the global economy. The Republicans simply went off the rails. By now, they're not a political party in any ordinary sense. That's been well recognized by leading political commentators. So 10 years ago, two major political analysts of the American Enterprise Institute, Conservative Institute, Norman Ornstein, Thomas Mann, wrote that the Republicans have become a radical insurgency, rejecting the methods of parliamentary democracy. It's become much more extreme since. It actually starts with Nixon. Nixon was a serious politician, whatever you think about him. He understood that Republicans cannot win votes by approaching their electorate with their actual policies. The policies are, we want to screw you. We want to support the extreme rich and the corporate sector. Whatever happens to you, can't get votes that way, obviously. So you have to try to divert attention to other matters, not our actual policies. Like the Trump administration doesn't approach voters by saying, our one legislative achievement has been to rob you blind, namely the highly regressive tax cut. You can't approach voters that way. So you turn to other issues. Well, for Nixon, it was what was called the Southern strategy. The Democrats had supported civil rights legislation in the 60s. Nixon and his strategists understood that if the Republicans came across with a not too hidden racist message, I won't say it outright, they could win Southern Democratic votes, which worked. By the mid-70s, Republican strategists, Paul Weier mainly, recognized that if the Republicans pretended, I stress pretended, to be opposed to abortion, they could pick up the huge evangelical vote and the Northern Catholic vote. So they all switched on a dime. Reagan had been governor of California, supported one of the strongest pro-choice measures, suddenly became passionately anti-abortion. H.W. Bush, all the rest of them. Later, they recognized that if they started yelling about guns, they could pick up another sector. And it continues that way. So turn to so-called cultural issues. Keep away from the actual policies. Well, that's the Republicans. And meanwhile, they're just kind of totally gone crazy. You can see it in the January 6th hearings. What about the Democrats? In the 70s, they abandoned the working class, handed them over to their class enemy. Democrats became a party of wealthy professionals, lawyers, doctors, academics, mostly socially liberal, but no class orientation, weren't interested. The kind of people who show up at Obama's fancy parties. That's the Democrats, plus the Wall Street orientation, Clinton Democrats. Working class is left on its own, no support. So they're easy prey to the cultural issues as they are under attack, and they're under severe attack. I mean, you take a look at the neoliberal programs that have taken off since Reagan. They've had an impact. Actually, the Rand Corporation, highly respectable corporation, tried to give a measure of it. They estimated that in the past 40 years, the transfer of wealth from the middle class and working class to the very top wealthy 1% is about $50 trillion. It's not small potatoes, and it shows up in many ways. One of the ways is that people are susceptible to these to ideas that are so outlandish that I can hardly repeat them. Like about a half of Republicans think that the Democratic Party is run by sex perverts who are trying to groom children for sexual abuse. 70% think the election was stolen. These people who rioted on January 6th were honest. They believed they were defending democracy from a crazed cabal that had stolen it. I mean, when people have beliefs like that, rational discussion is almost impossible. And the Democrats have offered nothing. Under the Biden administration, there actually were progressive proposals that could have met people's needs. They were basically coming out of Bernie Sanders' office in the Senate Budget Committee, all shut down. 100% rock-ribbed Republican opposition, a couple of right-wing Democrats. So nothing could pass. And the results, which are very harmful, are blamed on the Democrats. Unreasonably, but you can understand why. Well, you want to know where the country's going? They're taking over. They already have a Supreme Court, which is a throwback to the 19th century. And they'll presumably take Congress. Next president will either be somebody like Trump or maybe Trump himself or somebody like him. For Canada, this is a very serious problem. You can't escape.
That was Noam Chomsky, the voice of Noam Chomsky, and of course, as I said, he suffered a massive stroke, and so we won't be able to hear this political critic too much longer. He's a U.S. political theorist and activist and institute professor of linguistics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And besides his work in linguistics, Chomsky is internationally recognized as one of the most critically engaged public intellectuals alive today. And he continues to be an unapologetic critic of both U.S. foreign policy and its ambitions for geopolitical hegemony. And, of course, the neoliberal turn of global capitalism, which he identifies in terms of class warfare waged from above against the needs and interests of the great majority. You are listening to Community Speaks, and I just thought we'd start off today's program by listening to that one speaker. And, of course, he sounds very critical of both parties, but more so of the fall of intellectual conversation coming from the right in this country because they're trying to hide their true agenda behind culture war issues. And of course, that's been the idea, is to fuse new voters to the Republicans, despite the fact that a lot of those voters are voting against their own working class interests. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. Of course, people like to talk about third parties, political parties, but there are, even in our local ballots, there are a long list of parties that are available to you as voters. The Boricua Party, the American Solidarity Party of Florida, the Florida Forward Party. Used to be a People's Party, but it looks like they got delisted. But go to political parties, minor political parties, and you can see that long list of parties that we've all had an opportunity to choose from if we so chose to do so. But those are still minor parties and really not able to really compete politically. But a lot of these issues, working class issues, are issues we have been trying to talk about for decades right here on this radio station. One of the things we used to talk a lot about was the war on drugs and the idea that the police used to sell crack back in the 1980s in order to basically run a dragnet for users, not dealers, but users, people who we now understand were better in terms of fighting the scourge of crack cocaine by giving people treatment, not jail. And so a Florida prosecutor says he will seek to vacate as many as 2,600 convictions of people who bought crack cocaine manufactured by the Broward County Sheriff's Office between 1988 in 1990, and the Florida Supreme Court ruled in 1993 that people couldn't be charged in cases where the sheriff's office had made the crack cocaine and undercover deputies then sold it to buyers who were arrested and charged. In Broward County State Attorney Harold F. Pryor, who's the guy that's the state attorney who's trying to look back and free these people from their convictions, Harold F. Pryor says that while his office was reviewing old records, prosecutors realized many of the people may still have criminal charges or convictions on their records because of those sting operations back in the 1980s. So Pryor says it's never too late to do the right thing. And it's just one example of how the crack cocaine epidemic of the 1980s and the early 1990s led to harsh police practices and heavy criminal penalties. And some people may have been convicted of serious felonies because they bought drugs within 1,000 feet of a school, which was on purpose by the sting operators. The police were purposely trying to make sales near schools so that they can ramp up those charges. Conviction under that law required at the time that defendants be sentenced to at least 3 years in prison. We had detention deputies posing as dealers, and they would sell it, and these poor people who were addicts were buying it, and they were selling it within 1,000 feet of schools, so the penalties would be greater. All of that should be overturned. At least 2,600 of those convictions may be overturned if Harold F. Pryor down in Broward County has his way in doing the right thing. 813-239-9663. Like I said, there's going to be an attempt at closing some prisons now, especially women's prisons. The Federal Bureau of Prisons has informed its employees and members of Congress that it intends to idle 6 prison facilities across the nation and permanently close a women's prison in California dubbed the Rape Club by prisoners and workers because of rampant sexual abuse there that was uncovered by the Associated Press 2 years ago. But here in Florida, the one prison that looks like is on the chopping block is the federal prison camp in Pensacola. The 105 employees at this facility will be reassigned to other institutions in a move that officials hope will alleviate staffing shortages across the agency. The structures that make up this camp are owned by the U.S. Navy, which plans to demolish vacated buildings that are in significant disrepair. And the agency reports that the closest federal prison is FCI Mariana, which is about 2 hours away. So I'm sure a lot of those workers and probably some of those inmates will be transferred over there. And back to the international story, there's a revolution in Syria, and right now Syria's prisons have been infamous, which was infamous during the reign of terror of the Assad family and Bashar al-Assad. He say human rights groups and whistleblowers and former detainees, secret executions have been reported at more than 24 facilities run by Syrian intelligence, as well as other sites. And as we have seen, the outpouring of euphoria in Syria right now, after years of fighting, the fact that Russia wasn't able to come to their aid this time, and the fact that the United States did not intervene under Barack Obama, now the people did it themselves. There's a lot of people who are happy today in Syria as they have run this brutal leader out of the country, and a lot of the prisoners from Assad's reign have been freed. Are being freed right now as we speak. That's part of the euphoria that is happening right now. Right now, you're tuned to Community Speaks, and I do want to get to the telephone lines and talk to you, but you can also write 813-239-9663 if you have a comment that you want to share with Community Speaks. And I'm going to go to St. Pete and talk to Jamie. Go ahead, Jamie, you're on Community Speaks today. You say what?
For this.
Start over. I'm sorry. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, good morning, Mobili. How you doing today?
Pretty good.
Good. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for the topics you're bringing up. I wanted to call and just comment on, make some observations on this question. You brought up Noam Chomsky and his situation since the stroke. And what's significant about Noam Chomsky is that he's a theorist and a critic, of this system and of this government and a lot of things. And I wanted to raise up another critic who's extremely important for this period in history, and that's Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement, who has done so much to raise up the question of colonialism that so many people in the world are talking about right now as the primary contradiction faced by our world. And it's something that is more than, something in history or policy of any set of European governments, but it became a mode of production, right? Like the mode of production that defines capitalism, that brought capitalism into existence. And that's one critically important contribution that Chairman Omali Yeshitela has made. Another is, you were talking about the question of crack cocaine and the involvement of the police in producing crack cocaine. It was the Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru movement that popularized the slogan, "The White House is the crack house and Uncle Sam is the pusher man," highlighting the U.S. role in introducing crack cocaine into black communities throughout the United States. And, that was proven later by people like Gary Webb with his series of articles exposing the U.S. role in that. But the reason that I bring that up is that I want to, point out that Chairman Omali Yeshitela, along with Jesse Neville and Penny Hess of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, their life and liberty is on the line right now. And along with it is all of our right to free speech and opinion. The Uhuru Three, as they're known, faced these bogus charges at a trial in September here in Tampa, Florida, where they were charged with these outrageous charges of being unregistered Russian agents because they circulated a petition charging the U.S. government with genocide, and they spoke out against U.S. wars and called for reparations and ran local electoral candidates on a reparations platform. And I think, everyone needs to know that they were found not guilty of acting as Russian agents, which was a huge victory, but in a completely nonsensical verdict, they were found guilty of conspiring to act as Russian agents, which makes absolutely no sense. And that ruling will be appealed. However, in the meantime, they are going for sentencing at a hearing on next Monday, a week from today, December 16th, at the Sam Gibbons U.S. Courthouse. And the government does intend to imprison them, to lock them up for 5 years and charge each of them up to $250,000. And I think it's important to note that Chairman Omali Yeshitela is 83 years old. So we're, just letting people know that if you want to stand with people like WBAI host Betty Davis, with people like New York City Councilman and New York State Assemblyman Charles Barron, with Pam Africa of the Free Mumia campaign, and people from the Free Leonard Peltier Committee and others, they can come to the Sam Gibbons Courthouse in Tampa at 9 a.m. on Monday, December 16th. And also that there's going to be a anti-colonial free speech rally at the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg. That's 1245 18th Avenue South, the day before the sentencing hearing. That's Sunday, December 15th, 4 p.m. at the Uhuru House. People are welcome to come and attend that. And I just thought this was important to put out because, people should remember that this WMNF's mission, if I understand it, which is supported by the listeners, is to provide a platform for diverse voices committed to a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world. And I know that's something you're committed to, Mabili, and the vision that this should be a place where creative thought and free expression thrive. So I think it's critically important that we look at this question of the Uhuru Three, because if they're able to imprison these activists, these anti-colonial leaders, to imprison 83-year-old Chairman Omali Yeshitela, it will set this precedent where they're using this law, which this is the first time this law has ever been used against someone where the only so-called crime is speech, dissent, opinion, that the government doesn't want people to hear, that will put in jeopardy any kind of speech, dissent, opinion that someone wants to express that is contrary to what the U.S. government believes.
All right. Well, that's true. We are committed to free speech and doing the right thing, and of course, critical thought. And there's a lot of questions that should be asked, and I understand that there's the sentencing coming up, but I do want the three. I would suggest that the three speak with our news department. I think that would be one of the best ways of probing what is happening here and get some real answers about what went on and what people think is the right thing to do. But I think the news department, those three should talk to our news department as opposed to just coming on a talk show or sending other people to speak for them. I think they should speak for themselves with our news department. So that would just be my suggestion. Thank you, Jamie.
I appreciate that. Just to say, I'm calling on behalf of myself. As a listener, as a resident in the area, I think that this is a critically important issue, and I can certainly let the Hands Off Uhuru campaign know that you made that invitation. But this is something I'm doing out of my own personal conviction and belief in free speech and anti-colonial free speech and free expression.
Okay. They're fair. Thank you,
so
Jamie.
much.
Thank you for calling. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. And as I was talking about, there's an attempt right now to do the right thing in Florida. There's a need to understand just exactly what it is that really means justice in this country. And there are a lot of people who have faced injustice because of the war on drugs. And we have had many discussions, including with the Uhurus, about what the police role has been. And today, someone in position to make the change, make historical wrongs right, are in place in the name of at least one prosecutor down, or at least one state attorney down in Broward County. This state attorney, Harold F. Pryor, wants to overturn all of those convictions down in Broward County when police were selling crack cocaine to users in order to trap users. And we're seeing a lot of these. We have a lot of things that police are doing that we don't approve of, and so there are attempts on in localities to have police review boards. And as we have seen right here in Tampa, in the state of Florida, Tampa attempted to create a police review board to look at these cases, especially after they're adjudicated, so that there would be a second eyes on the police and not interfering with the cases, but after they've been adjudicated. There's a police review board that will look at police practices and what happened and whether or not that prosecution was fair. And the state, this red state under the control of a Republican, has decided that that's illegal for localities to have civilian review boards, that it has to be led by the sheriff. And we can all see how fraught that can be politically. So, this idea of finding justice from the past police practices is an important one, which is why the story of this state attorney, this Florida prosecutor who's seeking to clear the records of people who were charged with buying police-made crack in the 1980s is an important story to me, and we're going to be keeping a close watch on it and seeing how those 2,600 convictions go, whether they will be overturned and whether or not this will spread throughout Florida. And is that something that the people of Florida should be militating for and getting these types of convictions overturned and pushing for more civilian oversight of police practices so that we can prevent that kind of behavior going forward. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. I'm going to go to Upper Michigan and speak with our buddy Fred. Go ahead, Fred. You say what?
Yeah, I spoke with you a couple of weeks ago, and
Yes.
it was real insightful. And unfortunately, I got to say that I think in most cases you were correct. I was wrong about the electorate after I did some more research. But I appreciate your program, and I listen to Noam Chomsky. I'm a fan, and have for some time. It's been very enlightening. But with him gone, I really appreciate your commentator. I believe you have on Economic Today, I think is the
Yes.
program, Richard Wolff.
Yes, right. That's right. On our HD 3 channel.
Yeah, and it's been real helpful and insightful to what the process is about our capitalism.
Yes.
And he describes capitalism as the unrestricted monarchy in our country. I had to agree because there's no constraint on, their ability to move factories, decide prices, which Biden was trying to do. And Harris said she would address the monopolies, the price gouging.
Yes.
But unfortunately, I feel the pain. I never knew it. Well, I guess I had heard about the crack cocaine and, didn't really understand it. Maybe thought it was more mythology than real.
And now you know there were people who were actually convicted from sting operations by buying crack cocaine that were made by the police. And yes, that was well known then. A lot of people didn't want to believe it, but it was a practice.
Well, I was dabbling in college, and I got called a couple times by different police departments investigating. And so far I dodged it. But I was close, and it could have happened up here. So, but I appreciate your program, and really want to say thanks. So I did want to say Richard Wolff is a voice today that I thought might be carrying some of that torch and that information, and wanted to add. But thank you. Thanks again, and I'll keep listening way up here.
Okay. In Upper Michigan.
You keep educating us. I keep telling people about your station.
Thank you.
And I think it is probably the best station I've heard. Maybe it is the best in America. We wish we had you up here.
I certainly agree. We certainly agree with you.
Well, okay. Thanks for your work, bud. And I'll keep listening. I'll try to get smarter.
Okay. Thank you for calling. You sound very smart to me, Fred. Thank you for calling.
There's times. There's moments. All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Fred, thank you for calling. And we're going to go and see what Ron has to say. But you can also write DJ at WMNF.org. That's DJ at WMNF.org. And I'm so glad Fred mentioned Richard Wolff. You can check out our schedule, our HD schedule. You could definitely listen to our economic update every week right here on our HD channels. Go ahead, Ron and Mango, I'm coming to you. What's going on with you?
Oh, man, I don't know. I can't call it, is what they say.
I'm sure you can if you thought long and hard about it.
Yeah, just messing with you. But, no, in reference to the Hulu party, I wish them much success with that and the support, because it's a lot of stuff going on, and it's much like what you was talking. It's still, they use this entrapment because you have Russian agents walking around the country who are agents, but you allow them to participate with people. Then you can later come back and say, oh, they was this and you was that because of the connections like that. So that seems a lot foul of what I would think would be some real atrocious or some type of crime, criminal act. And then with the guy that you was talking about that's redeeming the people for the sting operations, I would call.
Oh, yeah. Harold Pryor, yes.
Yeah, Richard Pryor's nephew.
I like to think so, but okay.
Remember Richard Pryor? I burnt myself up. I ain't doing it like wide open with it. He wasn't really trying to protect anything, or he was straight up and honest. So, that's how it's supposed to be. Even the system's supposed to be straight up and honest, but they're making a laughing stock out of it with the stuff that's going on, man. It's atrocious. And I was caught up in two stings is the reason why I called.
Oh,
and
really?
The first sting was for some weed. And I wound up going to a jury trial on it for possession of a concealed weapon, which I was not involved in the sting. I just, I had a passenger, and the passenger let out, and the passenger got involved. Then they came and arrested me, too. And then they had, I had to go to jury trial on that. That's the first time I ever went to jury trial.
Yeah, it sounded like you got caught up in a dragnet, they were.
Oh, no, this is the key, though, Mabile. They was taking people's cars. They took my car that day, too, and I was going to a church down the street from that particular spot. So I used to be in the area on 29th and down there on Lake, and I think Jim Hargett had set all that stuff up like that with the Tampa Police Department. I see him over there walking, giving flowers, and he was going to clean up the community like that.
Oh, yeah, that was during that hot spots period in Tampa.
Oh, yeah, man, they was running some illegal ops over there, but I didn't know. I mean, I just ran into it, and I seen all the players. But yeah, they was. I went to church, and everybody in the church had, we in church sitting there, and everybody, they can smoke weed, so they went to try to buy weed, and they had got their vehicles taken. And during that process, I had to learn about the replevin laws and stuff, and went and got my car back that day because I needed to transport my family and myself. So I had to dig deep and suck it up. And when I went to church on Sunday, they was like, "Hey, how you got your vehicle back, man?" They took I said, "For what?" They about a dime bag.
Wow.
I said, "A dime bag?" I said, "Man, that don't even make no sense, man."
So it's like they were trying to use racketeering or the RICO Act just on users and for weed and taking in their cars.
They did, and it cost a lot of money
to get out.
They're not going, to get their car back, to get yourself out. I was taking on the Belma Heights and put in a little sale by myself. They put you in the paddy wagon. I went back there and we started talking. So they removed me and put me in a little cage by myself. And I was sitting there, the police walking by, looking at me in a little cage like a monkey. That was my first offenses right there. So I was like, man, this is the kind of they take you through right here. So. Yeah, the second time was just trying to act like I was, what they called it? They was trying to act like I solicited somebody, but the person flagged me down and was a police officer, and then they took my property again and took my weapon, which was in my glove compartment, and tried to keep it. It took me 6 months to get that back.
So the police flagged you down, and then they charged you for soliciting.
Yeah. It was a little more involved than that because I stepped into a place which I saw looked like a cowboy movie. They always have a person acting like they ain't involved. Then they have all these vehicles around that don't look like they should be their vans and cars, just like in the movies. Then you go into this place, and the places are set up. That's what I'm saying. Then they bust in, put guns to my head, hadn't did anything, hadn't performed it, hadn't did, and I went down for that and had a good judge. Then he said even the way they charged me, he told them at the end that he wrote it up as two consenting adults can do what they want to, so you can't be doing that. And plus, the person was a police because she was acting like she was fried out of her damn mind talking to me. Jumping all around, nervous, like, oh, no, I don't want to be there. So what the hell's going on here? What the hell's going on here? They busted with the guy. Got to get you. Next person, that's how they do it. Yeah, it's racketeering at its greatest, and that's what we're up against now. So, I mean, it's a long ride.
Running it like chattel. They running criminals, potential people they're criminalizing like chattel, like cattle.
But they change the variable. Is all they do. Like they can go from this group or this. I studied criminology also. That was what I studied. So they change the dynamics when they want to. They change the criteria when they want to. And that's the issue we have with this country. And there's no way to get any way or segue into the room or conversation because of all the politicized systems that we have. Yeah. And they seem to be more extreme or tainted at this point, to the point where there's nothing fair about it, or, it's a lot of instances.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that type of behavior, especially on the political right. And they empower, especially in Congress. They change the rules in order to get their way.
Yeah, like I was telling the guy the other day, like little kids, they try to steal all the sand out the box when they don't. You get your little sand castle, they get mad. Give me all your sand. I'll take your sand too. My sand. The other kid's sand is all my sand. Yeah. We're actually in a society where everybody's coming with the juvenile concept.
Right.
In an adult room of people that are perishing.
Yeah, we need
because
more.
The food is bad. The water is equally bad. I don't care what they say. And the air is definitely not too nice with all this stuff they're doing. And God knows only what's under the ground we're walking on. So it's not a pretty picture. And I'm not trying to paint no gloom, but I think people need to get up and do better. If they want better, they need to do better.
Good point. Thank you, Ron. Thank you for that. Thank you for calling.
Thank you for the time, Mabile, as always.
For certain. This is Community Speaks, your opportunity to speak. And you can call 813-239-9663. My sister Irene stands ready to take your telephone call. You can also write DJ at WMNF.org. And it's really about, let's see if we can find the culprits that's continuing to bastardize our rights in this country, and find those warriors who are willing to right the historical wrongs. And like Mr. Pryor, Prosecutor Pryor down in Broward County. And like I said, he's planning to trying to overturn 2,600 crack cocaine convictions. And as we were looking at the international situation, and we're seeing, prisoners being freed out of Syria, as a revolution in Syria has occurred, and the ruler has been sent fleeing, and he's gone to Russia to get some kind of asylum. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. And we're going to go back to St. Pete, talk to James. Go ahead, James. You're on Community Speaks.
Hey, sir. August 28th of 2024, on Tuesday Cafe, 2 members of the Year 3 were on.
Yeah, I'm certain they have come to speak to us at the shows. Like I said, would like to see our news department, even if it's a group of them, interviewing them to get more probative. And, it's important to understand what all went on there. And there's, these charges, happen because of what people are engaging in, and you can engage in things. There are certain processes that you have to do in order to not get in trouble, because this is not a world where you can just take people at their word. And there are a lot of questions about you fight imperialism, but not recognize imperialism. And Russia is a trouble spot right now. Like I said, we're fighting to help prop up the Syrian leader against the rebels, they call it, because they were Islamic. And the idea of invading another country because you want to keep the rest of Europe's NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries at bay, but nobody was threatening Russia. So in spite of that, in not being provoked, it invaded another country. And what kind of world can survive with rules like that? There are rules of engagement. And if you look at, Russia's history, there have been times that, as the Uhuru said, have helped black people, whether or not it was for geopolitical reasons, is important, but we certainly have to recognize that there is a right-wing agenda in Russia. The propaganda shows it. Putin has always been a conservative, so I'm not exactly sure why anyone who considers themselves a revolutionary or a person who's anti-imperialist would even work with Russia. So these are the types of probative answers we have to know. And if you don't do the right thing of involving yourself with a foreign agent or a foreign country without signing up as a foreign agent, then you're going to open yourself up to some trouble. There are rules, and everybody has to follow them, or you're going to suffer the consequences. That's just my opinion. You want to be on the right side of history. You want to protect yourself and your interests. And you don't do that by not taking care of what it is you're doing and how you might be opening yourself up to being a pawn in somebody else's designs, which I think Russia has done when it comes to Africa. But a lot of its problems are deepening. There's an economic crisis. The BRICS situation isn't going as well as they had hoped, as India has bowed out of trying to replace the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. China has not always been on Russia's team when it comes to doing that. So the whole BRICS situation seems to actually be falling apart, and the fact that Russia's too preoccupied with its war in Ukraine to go and help prop up Syria means that the Syrian dictator had to leave and now looking for asylum in Russia. 813-239-9663 is about time to get on out and make room for It's the Music Monday, as Melanie Whalen is getting ready to get us back to the music, which, of course, you will enjoy. But right now, you are tuned to Community Speaks here as part of the Public Affairs Midday Block. And my name is Patro Mobili, taking your telephone calls, 813-239-9663. As we're looking at historical developments and how to fix them, how to bring justice, and how to empower the people. We've talked about the political parties. We've listened to Noam Chomsky give his critique. People are all looking locally for other alternatives, but people are also looking to empower themselves against police practices that has led to more convictions, and now that's disempowering people, especially here in Florida. If you have a conviction, you can't vote, even in the aftermath of the amendment that supposedly helps return people's voting rights, the voting rights of the ex-cons who have done their time, and now the powers that be in Florida who wanted to weaken that freedom for people and helping people to move on from their ex-convict lives are being rearrested, had been rearrested when they tried to vote in this state. And so that put a chilling effect on people who have records. But when you take that, the disempowerment plus the fact that people should not have been trapped into these serious convictions years ago when police were finding it easier to go after users and not dealers and using sting operations with crack cocaine that the police made is calls us to action to really find some justice from these historical wrongs. And that's what we're trying to talk about today. Tomorrow, though, you can listen to the Urban Cafe at the 10 o'clock hour. You'll hear what St. Petersburg City Council members had to say about the Rays Stadium deal before they narrowly voted to approve bonds to finance the redevelopment. That should be very interesting. We've been listening and watching closely how this capital and this team has really pull their weight around to show that they really have the ultimate power, not the elected officials, and they can pick and choose whatever arena they want to play in, despite what governments try to do to placate them. They don't care. Eddie in Tampa, you're on Community Speaks. You say what as we run out of time here?
Yes, this is Eddie, and I want to see, we need 3 seats in Congress. Mm-hmm. The 3 seats we need to get, 2 in Florida and 1 in New York. I got 2 people that could run the Florida. It's Gwen Graham, mm-hmm. or Walter seat, and Joe Scarborough.
Oh.
for
New York.
in Pensacola.
Oh, okay. So those are people you think you would like to see empowered.
Yes,
to
I
change
just
things.
wanted to get a little shout out because if Joe Scarborough thinks that he's scared what's going to happen with the democracy, I guess he should put his mouth where the money is and become a Democrat or an independent and run for that seat. Since we could put Jeffries in there. All we need is 3 seats.
Hakeem, okay. Thank you, Eddie, for that. 813-239-9663. Go ahead, Joe in New Hampshire. I try to get through as many as I possibly can. Go ahead, Joe. You say what?
I'll talk really fast. First, I want to compliment the entire radio station, which is brilliant. I want to compliment you, who are doing such a great job helping to help people figure out how to navigate these immense complexities in terms of justice and empire and colonialism and racism. It's just so huge, and you're doing a wonderful job. I've heard the talk by somebody, we're lamenting Chomsky, who's no longer with us in the way that we'd want him to be, and Richard Wolff is wonderful. Another thinker that you might want to look into, his name is Timothy Snyder. You might know all about him. The station might already plugged onto him, but in terms of analyzing empire and how it corrupts us and oligarchy and how we're in such danger, I won't go into detail, but Timothy Snyder from Yale University really did a great course on Ukraine. All of his YouTubes cover similar properties, topics, but they're always something different. He doesn't repeat himself in any boring way. He always adds something new and interesting. And if you can get a hold of broadcasting some of his stuff, I think your audience would really appreciate it. And he's not scary in the sense that he's not a Marxist or a communist. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Yeah. I'm turning into one myself. But thank you for your work.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for your call. 813-239-9663. I think we can take one more call. Go ahead, Mary from Dunedin. You said what?
I said, hey, first of all, thanks for the show. I love it. And you were addressing the felons' right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
The Florida Rights Restoration Coalition is a tremendous help to people. They help pay their bills. Michael Bloomberg sent like $32 million down here to help.
Right.
So just wanted to pass that on in case people weren't aware. They can contact Florida Rights Restoration Coalition.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Mary. I think I would call them myself.
Oh, you should. You should. They're a wonderful group.
Yes. Florida Rights Restoration.
I won't hold you.
Thank you, Mary. This is Community Speaks, and we've just been taking your telephone calls, but I was especially focused on prison issues and the issues of human rights, especially our politics right now, and our impact on international politics. And we've been watching the unfolding Syrian revolution, and we've been wondering what's coming next. We are very engaged in all of these issues, and I think that it's important that we all stay engaged in all of these issues. And we're going to continue to talk about these issues and put it in perspective from the local level to the national to the international level. This has been Community Speaks, and we're going to go on and make room, get back to the music here on It's the Music Monday here on WMNF Tampa, but hopefully we're going to get some news update. I think this time from National Public Radio News, and then we're going to get back to the music. But my name is Patrick Mobili, your host for Community Speaks. Thank you for all your telephone calls and emails, and we'll continue to bring these issues to the forefront moving forward. WMNF Tampa.
Different on purpose. You're tuned to Mission Driven. Listener supported. WMNF Tampa.
This is WMNF Tampa, and now next is The Scoop here on WMNF.